All right, there's the next episode of True Wrestling Fans Discussions, continuing our WCW pay-per-view review series. This is going to be Fall Brawl 1997 War Games. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank, man. Let's get into it. This one, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it's not bad.
No, it was
It,
okay.
it,
It was all
it
right.
was different.
Yeah.
Different. Again, it's NWO versus WCW, but it's a different bunch of guys in the NWO versus the Four Horsemen. So that's where I say it's different. Um, I thought back then, watching Nitro and leading up to this, that when they pulled Page and Luger out of War Games, that it was going to kind of hurt it, which in fact it didn't. But we do get an ultimate surprise in the main event, as always with the NWO. So let's go. Let's kick this off. September 14th, 1997, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We're in Flair country, baby. We've got Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, Larry Zbyszko, and Mike Tenay all doing the commentary here. Although Tenay did bow out after, I think, the third match, and Zbyszko took over for the rest of the evening, and he would play a role later on in one of the matches in his feud with Scott Hall. So here we go. Opening match of the night for the Cruiserweight Championship. Chris Jericho defending the title against Eddie Guerrero. Their feud this in 1997, well documented. This wasn't the first time they locked up. Title changed hands between these guys back and forth, other titles. So this one would be no different. And watching these two wrestle in WCW was great. This was a great opening match.
Yeah, good way to start the night off.
Yeah, that always with the cruiserweights, especially these two guys.
Oh yeah, you can't go wrong.
These guys are workhorses. We'd see that again in WWE when they're both there. Guerrero, he's got the attitude change in 1997, which kind of, I think, benefited him better. Jericho's going to go through his soon because the coming out and going, yeah, come on, baby, is just not working at this point with some of the fans. But like I said, this was an interesting match. They pulled out all the stops in this one, everything they could try to do. It was very interesting as the match was finishing up. Jericho had Guerrero on the top rope, almost kind of like a superplex.
Yeah.
And it looked like, at first, if you look at it, it looks like he comes off with some type of style of a brainbuster. But in fact, Guerrero kind of twisted his weight a little bit to where Jericho hits his head on the mat and Guerrero just bounces right back up. And he's able to go back to the top rope, hit the frog splash, and lo and behold, Eddie Guerrero wins, and he's now the new Cruiserweight champion. So it was a nice little reversal that he did there.
It did actually look like Jericho hit his head.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really did or not, but it looked real. It looked legit.
Yeah, like I said, I went back a little bit because I hadn't seen this since I watched it live at a friend's house back then. And I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? Because like I said, it looked like almost a brain buster, and Guerrero gets up like it's nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, it did kind of look like he hit his head a little bit there, but he's all right. He's a tough guy. So our next match is where Larry Zbyszko joined the commentary team. Mike Tenay was still doing it as well. This was another great match, great rivalry in WCW. One of my favorites. The Steiner Brothers versus Harlem Heat.
Steiner Brothers with Ted DiBiase.
That's the only thing that didn't make any sense to me.
Well, remember he leaves the NWO and then he manages the Steiner Brothers, which I didn't understand.
Him as a fan favorite, I just can't. It doesn't work. And then of course you got Jacqueline in the corner.
They just had to do something with him because he was under contract. I guess he was under contract, so they're like, we got to do something with him. So
they're not going to make him a commentator. You got enough of those.
Bischoff basically took his role in the NWO. Once Bischoff is revealed as the mastermind, that DiBiase's kind of like,
he hit the bricks.
Yeah. So
unfortunately, because I actually liked it better with DiBiase as being they could have actually done both because DiBiase being the finance.
Yeah.
While Bischoff,
I guess,
is the ultimate,
for whatever reason,
the ultimate power or whatever, something like that. But in any event, they did what they did. So he's in the corner of the Steiners. You could tell Scott Steiner starting to have the changeover. He's a lot bigger. He's got the goatee. Several months from now, unfortunately, the Steiners will be over and done with. But before that, we get a great feud here. And like DiBiase didn't fit in with the Steiners, I didn't think Jacqueline fit in with Harlem Heat. I thought Sherry was way better And then when Sherry wasn't in the picture anymore, I think honestly they should have just left them alone. She didn't. To me, she didn't fit in.
Yeah.
It didn't mesh.
Mm.
But again, still a great match between the two. It was interesting during the match. The Harlem Heat, they hit the Heat Seeker on Rick Steiner, but they couldn't get the pin. The Steiners hit a combination clothesline German suplex on Stevie Ray, and that's how they got the pin. So I was kind of hoping for a Frankensteiner or something to that effect. But both teams are vying for a number one contendership pretty much again for the outsiders. Because you remember beginning of the year, the Steiners were stripped of the tag team titles. And so they're looking for revenge. Harlem Heat's looking for revenge. It would have been cool to see kind of maybe a triple threat tag team title match or something here at Fall Brawl, but unfortunately we didn't. Matter of fact, there was only 2 title matches, period, on this card, which is a little odd that, the U.S. title we know can't be defended. Mongo's in the War Games. Hogan's not there, naturally. So, and they didn't defend the tag titles because Hall and Nash were split up at this point for this night. So we only had 2 title matches for it. But yeah. Steiner Brothers do get the victory, and they're eyeing the outsiders for a future tag team title match.
At some point during this pay-per-view, they have a backstage thing with Jeff Jarrett on the internet.
Yeah.
And then he says, and he broke 6,000 guitars, never drew a dime. And when Jeff Jarrett came out, you hear a rap piss on cotton. And he has the nerve to say...
And we'll say that again when his match comes up.
And he has the nerve to say, he says, well, and that's why they call me the greatest wrestler in the world. And I'm like, who calls you the greatest
wrestler?
Who calls you that? Other than yourself and maybe your father. That's it.
I don't know if you saw on Facebook recently, but I had posted it that at one point, Taylor Swift, before, she became who she is, babysat Jeff Jarrett's kids. And I think Rich was the one to comment, anybody break any guitars?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
So, but yeah, we've got a Jeff Jarrett moment in this pay-per-view, unfortunately. So our next match on the card, Mike Tenay came back to do some commentary for it. It was for the television championship. Alex Wright defending the title against the Ultimo Dragon. Now this is heel Alex Wright, which really doesn't matter. And of course, what the fans were chanting during the match led, now you know that the fans' attitude and the way they are, their demeanor is shifting in 1997. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to repeat what they said. It wasn't pretty, but Das Wonder Kid didn't really care. He's, over there just dancing the same moves for 6 years. And Ultimo Dragon is rid himself of Sonny Ono, which he's way better for anyway. I thought this match, despite Alex Wright, his disposition, his cockiness in the match, I thought it was pretty good. The aerial moves on both of these guys are phenomenal. I always loved Ultimo Dragon. I said when he went to WWE, he was never given a proper chance. However, his career was winding down.
I think he was already injured. I think by the time he got there, he had a bad neck injury, I think.
Yeah, so pretty much WrestleMania 20 was like a one and done for him.
He's always picking him in the video game, I remember.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And like I said, Alex Wright, still showing what he can do despite, his arrogance and whatnot. This wasn't a regular TV title match as far as the time restraints. Mm-hmm. This went longer, just about under 20 minutes. Ultimo Dragon during the match did attempt for the second time a Dragon Sleeper on Alex Wright, but he was able to counter with a jawbreaker, and then he follows up with a German suplex, and that's how he got the victory. So I thought the finish was a little cheesy, but the match itself was pretty good.
Yeah, that was a good match.
So that's now one of the rare few times I'll say Alex Wright had a good match in WCW.
Nah, he wasn't bad.
Just when creative,
bad gimmick. But
exactly,
he was a good wrestler. I thought he was a good wrestler.
When they made him Berlin, and then teaming him with the Wall, which was even worse. And then when they realized that didn't work, it took them long enough to find out. Then they put him back as Alex Wright, and they put him in with the Boogie Nights with Disco Inferno. Oh. So by that point, it was creative that destroyed him, unfortunately. So following that, Mean Gene in the back, naturally promoting the hotline because, Lord knows he needs the money. And this was funny because while he's back there promoting the 900 number, you see the NWO, you see Nash, Six, Conan, and Bagwell running by him like little school kids laughing. All of a sudden, there's a commotion, and then they run back, and then Gene is like, what's going on? Goes into the locker and finds Kurt Hennig laying on the floor. Now, when I was at my friend's house watching this live, I got up and said, all right, that's it. The main event has already been called. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, he's going to turn on him. This is BS. I said, they've done this already 1,000 times in the last year. I mean, this is clear as day. He was like, no, man, give it a chance. Yeah, okay, I should have bet money on that one.
So Kurt Hennig taken out.
Yeah, he's just laying there. And
later on, we'll get to what happens with that.
Oh, yeah. So our next match on the card was pretty much a number one contenders match. The winner would get a United States title match at Halloween Havoc. It was Dean Malenko versus your boy, Jeff Jarrett's number one fan.
Yeah.
With Deborah McMichael. Yeah, we don't have to go through it again. Just unfortunately, since we're doing the Raw Nitro reviews and then also doing these pay-per-views around this time, we're going to be saying it way too much. This is going to be a whole lot of Jeff Jarrett's moments.
Former Four Horsemen, Jeff Jarrett.
For like a cup of coffee. And it was interesting in this because before the match even started, he sends Deborah to the back, which you know is not going to hold up. So he's like, and he's telling Malenko, I don't want, no excuses, no nothing. I'm gonna wrestle you. We're gonna do this. Yeah, whatever. It was during the match, right when she showed up, is when Malenko had him in the Texas Cloverleaf. All of a sudden, she comes back down in a panic. But Jarrett got to the ropes in that one. He applied the figure four on Malenko and gets the submission. I really thought if you're going to do this as a number one contenders match, do it as a submission match.
Should have done that.
Make it a little bit more interesting. I mean, Malenko, I liked his style of wrestling, even though he had literally no personality, but he didn't need one. He did his speaking in the ring. He's with two second-generation wrestlers. This was a decent match despite the feelings of Jeff Jarrett that we have. But Jarrett gets the victory. He's going to go on and face Mongo at Halloween Havoc if Mongo's still the champion at that time. Plenty of heat between those two and involving Deborah as well. Mm-hmm. So the next segment they had was the NWO had a paid segment.
Yeah.
Nash, Six, Conan, and Bagwell. And I'll get to why these guys were in War Games when we get to the main event. But they were, talking about, the whole thing with Kurt Hennig, and then Kevin Nash he's starting to come off like a little bit like Diesel from Two Dudes with Attitudes at this point. Like you kind of can see it a little bit and whatnot. Of course, Six, just acting like himself. Bagwell acting like himself. Conan,
remember the build-up. Remember the build-up was the whole thing about my spot, your spot, liver spot. Like,
yeah, I was gonna bring that up at the main event.
It would be an honor. Yeah, no, that was great stuff. That was
Yeah, I figured I was gonna mention that when we get to that. I don't want to jump the gun on it, but I'm sure everybody knows that that segment. So we'll get to that in a minute. Now, next match on the card kind of was like almost two heel tag teams. However, the Faces of Fear were getting cheered. Mm-hmm. It was the Faces of Fear, Ming and Barbarian, minus Jimmy Hart, against Wrath and Mortis from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Just kidding. With James Vandenberg at ringside. The crowd was kind of, I know both teams pretty much come off his heels, but the crowd kind of leaned towards Ming and Barbarian. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, something about Wrath and Mortis teaming together that I kind of liked it. I wish they would have kept it going more. I
thought they were fine. They were
Mortal Kombat type.
Yeah, but I thought they were good.
They had a good chemistry in the ring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, another tag team that they quickly put together, quickly disband, unfortunately. And of course, it didn't take long. Vandenberg got involved several times in the match, especially when he got up on the apron and Ming had enough and applied the Tonga death grip on him. And then Mortis comes over, super kicks him, nothing. Tries to chop him, nothing. So he gets a Tongan death grip. We got it on both of the boys. So unfortunately, though, with Wrath constantly getting the referee distracted, he broke it up and applied the death penalty and gets the pin, gets the victory for Wrath and Mortis, which I thought was pretty impressive over Ming and Barbarian. Mm-hmm. So this is where I thought they might escalate.
Right, they might go somewhere, but not really.
But eventually they kill the whole thing. and then again, eventually Mortis just becomes Chris Kanyon, which is not. I'm not knocking that. He was great. Chris Kanyon was underrated. We talked about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wrath underrated in WCW. I'm not getting started in WWE, so I'm not going there. But I mean, they didn't do anything with these guys that had talent, unfortunately. So it was what it was. Next segment on the card, Mean Gene was interviewing the Four Horsemen minus Kurt Hennig. You had Flair, Benoit, and McMichael, and they were fired up for the match, despite the fact that they figure that they're going in this -1. This seems like deja vu from the year before when they the same thing when it came to Sting. And then, of course, Shivani kept saying throughout the card, is anybody going to step up in WCW? Because remember, Page and Luger were taken out originally by interim commissioner Piper for their match later on in the evening. So next match on the card, I actually enjoyed this one. I thought it was cool. It was the Giant versus Scott Norton. And the reason why I liked it is because the Giant possessed so much agility for a big man.
Yeah, especially at that point, because he was still in pretty good shape. Yeah.
When have you ever seen a 500-pound, 7'4" man do a kip up? I mean, that's insane.
Well, they did exaggerate his height. He wasn't really 7'4".
7 foot then. Yeah. But then also, what?
But either way, it was still impressive.
Oh, yeah. Not to mention the fact that Scott Norton is treating him like a cruiserweight.
Mm-hmm. Well, Scott Norton's a big dude.
Yes, he is. I mean, he's dropping him on the rope. He's body slamming him like it's nothing. He's picking him. I mean, this was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this. It was a little short for my taste. I thought it could go a little bit longer. Probably they were pressed for time.
I thought it was fine. I thought
the 5.5 minutes.
Yeah, for that. Because if it went a little bit longer, who knows? It might not have been as good,
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. So,
but I love how Big Show, right? Not yet. The Giant is down. All of a sudden, sticks that hand up in the air, does the kip up, gets the choke slam on Scott Norton, and he gets the victory over Norton. The fresh jumped out of the NWO. Don't worry, I plan on going back and then coming out and then going back and then coming out again. Don't worry, everybody. But the Giant got a huge ovation in this, and like I said, this was a good match, better than probably most people will give it credit for. So next match on the card, it was billed as a grudge match / no disqualification match, even though we kind of really didn't see it until it came into the referees. But it was Diamond Dallas Page and Lex Luger versus Macho Man Randy Savage and Scott Hall, one half of the tag team champions. This is a match that, okay, I know it's NWO, so it doesn't matter who you team each other up with. I just thought it was weird seeing Savage and Hall teaming up together.
But that was fine. It was different, Razor Ramon and Macho Man.
Not to mention the Savage Luger
Funny
history.
How they were. Yeah, remember, Survivor Series, was it 92?
They fought in 92, teamed in 93.
Again, So
every time I go back and watch these, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to happen again and whatnot. Of course, Page and Savage have their history of 97 well documented. Luger and his history with Savage. I mean, this match was pretty good. The no DQ part of it came when you didn't see you had to kind of look to the second ring when Scott Hall took out Mark Curtis after Curtis got up in his face. And then, of course, the second referee comes down, Mickey J. Which, quick side note, and I read this article the other day. Did you know that when Sid Justice in 1992, when he started going through that psychotic phase, one of the jobbers that he sent on a stretcher was Mickey J.
I don't know that.
Yep. During one of those superstars, I'm nuts. The guys with the white coats and the nets need to come get me.
Psycho. Yeah, don't call me
exactly. Mickey J was one of those victims, unfortunately. So he comes out, and of course, Scott Hall attacks him. So now we've got no referee during this match. This is where Larry Zbyszko finally had it. Now, of course, he's got this ongoing thing going with Scott Hall. And so here comes the living legend down to the ring. He's up on the apron. I like how he baited Scott Hall. I thought the finish was a little cheesy, but
pushed him.
Yeah, and then Luger rolls him up, and Zbyszko counts to three, and Page and Luger win. And like I said, the only part of this that was no DQ was hitting the referees,
Right,
which
right,
didn't make
right.
any sense. I think this should have just been billed as a street fight and let them just kill each other. So, but it was what it was. But WCW does get the advantage once again over the NWO because remember Giant beat Scott Norton, so now these guys have won. Ultimately, they win the night, but not quite. So now we go on to our main event, which is the War Games match,
Yep.
and it was Kevin Nash, Six, Conan, Buff Bagwell from the NWO, Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, Mongo McMichael, the U.S. champion, and supposed to be Kurt Hennig, the newest member of the Horsemen. Now here comes the backstory with a great segment. Arn Anderson wasn't, medically cleared. He was having the issues with his neck, so he offered his spot in the Four Horsemen to Kurt Hennig,
Yep.
and he tells him it would be an honor. So what do we get from the NWO? We get Kevin Nash in the neck brace. We get
with the beer cooler,
and all the spots on his head. You get Six dressed up as Ric Flair, Conan as Mongo, and then you got Bagwell sporting the ponytail.
Yeah, that was a classic promo.
Awesome, man.
Hilarious.
Not just any spot, liver spot, dog spot, but my spot. It would be an honor. This was one of the best things. This is where I said when DX did theirs on Nation of Domination the following year, I said that they bid off of this promo right here.
Of course they did. Yeah.
Unfortunately, even though theirs was good, yeah,
theirs was funny too, though. But this was
a classic promo, and just the whole spot thing. Any spot, liver spot, my spot.
No, it was hilarious.
It was awesome, but because of what we saw earlier in the night, I knew, or I had the feeling back then, because it was always written on the wall every time something like this with the NWO, that something was up with Kurt Hennig. So here we go. The match started off with Chris Benoit and Buff Bagwell, which went pretty well. Now, when I said that this War Games, it wasn't as impactful to me, at least, as the year before, but it was different because it had different guys from the NWO that wouldn't normally main event a pay-per-view, meaning Conan and Buff Bagwell. Kevin Nash being in there, definitely. So, but the match did not disappoint whatsoever, despite any doubts anybody might have had with going in like, wow, this card is ridiculous. No, this match was pretty good, and you got the Four Horsemen battling them in Flair country. So naturally, the coin toss gets won by the NWO. You could tell by Conan and Kevin Nash.
The heels always win.
They always win.
The heels always win.
You're never getting one over. And of course, Heenan was like, that's because they used a two-headed coin. So the next participant at this point, then Conan went in for the 2-on-1 handicap. Mongo McMichael followed after him. Six, Ric Flair, naturally, because he thought he was the last person. And of course, once Kevin Nash got in, man, he was wrecking everybody.
Yeah.
Now, Kurt Hennig did come down with his arm in a sling. Yeah. Now, did you notice that when Flair went up to Hennig, right before Flair had gone in, he kind of puts his hand by the sling, either to make sure that Hennig had what he had to bring in the match, or he gave it to him. But it looked a little peculiar.
I didn't.
Yeah, he kind of went up to him and put the hand in the sling. So I guess just to make sure, okay, do you have him? Why? Because when Kurt Hennig got in the ring, he took the sling off and he had handcuffs. Winston-Salem's going nuts. However, he takes the handcuffs and hits Mongo, and now we've got a 5-on-3 match.
Yeah, he started beating up Flair, and
this is the downside of the match. Okay, I got no problem with handcuffing Mongo and Benoit. Nash going around asking them all, do you submit? Do you surrender? Benoit spitting at him. They're all telling him, hell no, beating the hell out of Flair.
Flair gets jackknifed.
Yeah. Now, doing that kind of, I thought was a little cheesy. And of course, they put, they open the door. Kurt Hennig has got Flair by the door where they're pretty much going to guillotine him. And they tell the Four Horsemen, look, if you surrender, we'll spare him.
Right.
All right, we give up. and then they do it anyway.
Bam.
Bam.
Yeah, that was crazy, dude.
It was.
It looked good. It looked like
Yeah.
it looked legit. The only problem I'm gonna say this about I don't think this is good booking. I'm gonna tell you why.
Okay.
You had them embarrass the Four Horsemen, right? And it was a great promo, don't get me wrong, but they embarrassed them, and then they don't even get any payback. They get their
No.
asses whipped, and then
they get the loss in the themselves.
And then the guy that they picked turns on them. And not for nothing, I think Kurt Hennig would have fit in better with the Four Horsemen than he did with the NWO.
Absolutely.
I think he was a much better fit.
Remember, history with Flair, with the two of them in WWF. So
I think this was a mistake booking wise, especially because then they just get their asses whipped. They lose the match, and then they go off the air, and they're just lying there. All of them, their asses handed to them.
And this was an ongoing thing for Flair and the Horsemen for a couple of years.
The Horsemen never got. It's like they never got their comeuppance, you know, like, and it's.
And the NWO was 2-0 in War Games.
And I was an NWO fan. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, you have to give them something, like at least give them.
Every so often, the NWO has to lose. Something.
Right. So I thought this was bad. I thought that was actually bad booking. I enjoyed the show. Don't get me wrong, but
I mean, even if Hennig is going to turn, find a way where the Horsemen get the victory anyway. You know, they surprise, they roll up.
Someone else comes out. Someone else comes out.
Exactly.
To help.
But, because Schiavone was like, "Is there anybody?" And of course, the fans are chanting, "We want Sting."
Yeah, not yet.
Hell, I wanted Sting. And matter of fact, I even saw it during the pay-per-view. The camera kind of went up to the rafters, but there was no Sting.
Right.
I just can't believe somebody didn't come out when they saw this, because it's not like the referee's not going to allow them to come into the cage. Right. There's no disqualification. I just would have thought that if again, even though he turned, let the Horsemen find a way to sneak out this victory in their pretty much their hometown, their territory. But
that's what
like I said, this was an ongoing thing with Flair and everybody getting their butt kicked day in and day out.
Week in and week out, just beating.
Eventually, it's got to the tide's got to change. Yeah. But unfortunately,
not tonight.
Definitely not tonight.
All right, well, that's our review. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys soon.
Take care.